right, guys, welcome to part 2 of Family Dynamics. We're going to pick up with positive reinforcement. So positive reinforcement is a response that encourages a particular behavior. So we want to make sure that to encourage a positive behavior, we have to give them the positive reinforcement to let them know that behavior was great and we'd like to see it again. So when children learn that an action wins attention and approval from adults, they're more than likely to repeat that action. So if we compliment a kid or point out that they did really well picking up all their toys today, they're probably going to have a higher chance of wanting to pick up their toys again tomorrow when they play with them. So we want to make sure that we encourage this particular positive behavior by giving them the positive reinforcement to follow that. So here's some guidelines to help encourage appropriate behavior. Number 1, be specific. So when you encourage them, you want to make sure that you comment exactly on what they're doing. So if you just say, "Good job, Billy," Billy may not know exactly what is a good job because in his mind, he might have accidentally dropped something the same time you said "good job." So it might cause some confusion. So you want to be specific and say, "Good job picking up your toy," the specific behavior that you're commenting on it. You also want to comment on the behavior as soon as possible. If they do something really great at 10 a.m. in the morning, don't wait until dinner time to tell them what they did. Chances are they're probably not going to remember. So they did something really great, tell them at that time. If you want to let the other parent know that they've done something great and your first time to talk to them is at dinner time, encourage the child to talk about it. So if you said, "Hey, Billy had a really great day today. Billy, what did you do today that was so great?" Or when you played with your friends, how did you play with them? What was so awesome about that? And they may be able to tell you the positive behavior that they did. You also want to recognize small steps. So even though it's kind of hard for sometimes us to get back in the mindset of a small child, when they've done something that to us seems totally normal and expected, but for them it's something new and they've done it well, you want to recognize that's a small step for them and they've actually done something on their own. So really, that's actually kind of a big step for them, even though it's a small step in our eyes. We got to get to the mindset of a small child. You want to help children take pride in their actions. You want to help tailor the encouragement to the needs of the child, and you want to make sure that you use positive reinforcement wisely. When you start overusing positive reinforcement, it loses its value. So you want to make sure in order to help with that you use it wisely, not too sparingly to where they feel like they don't know what to do in order to get the positive behavior, but you don't want to use it too much to where they can almost write out a script. I did this, my mom's going to say good job. So you want to make sure that you give them kind of the appropriate amount of time to use it, which is kind of hard to gauge. So it's something that you kind of learn by trial and error. We know that small children are going to have inappropriate behavior. Sometimes they just don't know how to express themselves in appropriate ways. Sometimes we haven't taught them that yet. Sometimes they know what they're doing is wrong and they're still going to do it anyway because they're learning their boundaries. And so sometimes they have to learn what consequences are. So no matter how hard adults try to encourage appropriate behavior, all children misbehave from time to time. We've seen it and we've done it as well. So we want to make sure that we try our hardest to encourage his appropriate behavior, but also keep in mind too that this behavior is going to happen. We have to deal as adults, we have to deal with the situation appropriately and effectively. So some questions to consider when deciding how to respond to misbehavior. Is the expected behavior appropriate given the child's age and development? And when we talk about their development, kind of more of their cognitive development. Do they understand that the behavior was wrong in the first place? If you have a small child that goes down the slide by themselves all the time, and they go outside and they're going to do that, all of a sudden they're getting in trouble for it. What the child may not have noticed is that the parent wasn't standing next to the slide when they went down it. And all the other times they've been to the park and this has happened, mom or dad or the babysitter has always been with them on the slide. So either they go down the slide with them, they're standing next to it, they're holding their hand. Well, the child doesn't kind of really take that into account. They see the slide, they're like, cool, I've done this 1,000 times. I'm going to go down the slide. They go to slide down, no adult is there, all of a sudden they're getting in trouble. They may not have legitimately have known that that was a rule because it was never told to them. So you want to make sure that they're aware if the behavior was wrong in the first place. Some kids legitimately just may not know. And then did the child do the behavior knowingly and deliberately, or was it beyond their control? Let's say it's a rainy day outside and little Billy just wants to kind of burn out some of this energy that he's got. So he's kind of playing around the house. He's playing, let's say he's playing with the dog. He's playing tug of war with the dog and one of the toys. Let's say the dog is able to yank the toy out of little Billy's hand. And as it comes back, it breaks something. It breaks a vase. It breaks the coffee table. It is by complete accident. And in fact, the dog is the one who broke it, not Billy. So when we go out there, did Billy purposely try to break the coffee table? No, it was by complete accident. It was beyond his control. So when we're talking about that and we're dealing with that inappropriate behavior, but was that a behavior really inappropriate or was it by complete accident? Should Billy be in trouble for that? And that's a question that parents kind of have to reflect back and think, okay, this was a complete accident. His intentions weren't to break things. It was just a complete, just random thing that happened. So it's some questions that parents have to keep in mind. So when we talk about negative reinforcement, I want you guys to kind of ignore this. It's really wordy and honestly, it kind of doesn't make sense. But I want you guys to think about negative reinforcement. It's when we basically are providing some type of discipline to discourage a behavior. And there's a difference between discipline and punishment. Discipline, there's kind of that learning aspect that follows up with this. So that's the parent kind of explaining, this is why you were put in timeout, or this is why you are not allowed to play with the broken toy anymore. We kind of have to keep that in mind. When there's punishment, it tends to be a lot more harsh, and there's not that follow-up with it. So it's not as effective in discouraging that behavior. In fact, it's probably only going to harm the relationship between the parent that dealt out the punishment and then the child that received the punishment. Look at it from a discipline point of view. Also keep in mind too that some people believe in punishment of spanking the child, smacking the child, things like that. We're not going to really kind of get into that conversation. We're just going to stick with the negative reinforcements that we know. So the first one that we're going to look at is called natural consequences. Children suffer from the actual result of their action. Okay, we're playing with a toy. Little Kevin drops or not even drops. Let's say he decides to throw his toy repeatedly after his parents said to stop. Okay, little Kevin is well aware that he is breaking a rule right now. He's deliberately doing it. Does it a couple more times. Oh, look, the toy breaks and the parents do not replace it. That is the natural consequence. Kevin broke his own toy. Parents tried to prevent Kevin from breaking the toy. So now Kevin has to play with his old toys. The natural consequence is that, it broke. You don't get to play with it. It's kind of how it is. You are driving and maybe we're driving on our phone or driving and we're on our phones, which we know that we shouldn't be. Let's say you get into a little fender bender, or maybe you backed out of the driveway and you hit the mailbox. Okay. Now there's a broken mailbox. That's the natural consequence of it. There's evidence that you have broken a rule, which potentially could lead us into another type of negative reinforcement called a logical consequence. Okay. You have done something that when you backed out of that driveway and you broke that mailbox, the logical consequence may be you have to pay for a replacement. Okay, that's when a parent chooses to address a child's misbehavior with consequences that have a connection to the misbehavior. Back out of the driveway, you bump into the mailbox, it breaks down. The logical consequence, now you have to pay for a new mailbox. And let's say your parents want a deluxe one. So you're paying $30, $40 and you have to learn how to put it in properly. So that would be a logical consequence from that. What your parents may also do is what we would call a loss of privileges. So parents may take away something that the child has earned that relates to the misbehavior. Okay. You were borrowing dad's car when you backed out of the driveway because you don't have your own car yet. So loss of privileges, after you've broken the mailbox, you've replaced it. Your parents may say, okay, now you cannot drive anywhere this weekend. That driving is a privilege. Let's keep that in mind too. Driving is a privilege. So you have that privilege. It is now taken away because you did not follow the rules. The last one is a timeout. This is one that I know we kind of look at it from the aspect that it is to kind of pull the kid away. They're misbehaving. They're not allowed to have fun. Well, a timeout, the real purpose of a timeout is to really give the child a chance to calm down and regain self-control. Okay. They are so what we call dysregulated. Their emotions are so roller coastery. They're up and down, up and down. They're screaming, they're crying, they're kicking. they need a chance to regain that self-control. Sometimes when the child gets up and walks away, they, number one, have a fear that they're going to be missing out on things and they want to be able to participate. However, their emotions are telling us otherwise. So we should give them a chance to calm down. When you sit there and try to talk to a child when they're so dysregulated, they are not going to hear anything. Their brains are so preoccupied with emotions right now that you trying to talk logically to them, hey, if you just sit in timeout for 4 minutes, you can be out of trouble. That's not going to make sense to them. So you want to keep that in mind. Most professionals and experts in the field of child development advise that the amount of time that a timeout should last depends on the age. So, for example, a 4-year-old should be in timeout for 4 minutes. Sometimes when they're not used to being put in timeout, they will test the limit of, okay, you put me on the naughty step or you put me in the timeout area, and they get up and they walk away. You restart that 4 minutes. So sometimes the attempt of timeout will take 2 hours. However, them actually sitting in the designated spot should only take 4 minutes or however old they are. So the attempt to time out may be a long time. However, the actual physically sitting down should only be their age in minutes. Some poor disciplinary measures that sometimes parents run into, we try to be well-meaning, but sometimes we just choose disciplinary measures that basically come back to bite us. And they can even sometimes be harmful psychologically. So some of these techniques may include bribing. What is a child going to learn by bribing? Hey, if you're good in this store and don't scream, I'm going to give you a toy. So they walk in, they decide, I want the toy now. They start whining and screaming and crying about it. The parent goes and grabs a toy to basically shut the child up. What has the kid learned? Hey, if I scream and yell the moment I walk in the store, I get my toy faster. So we don't want to teach them those types of behaviors. Making children promise to behave, that's kind of an interesting one, because sometimes when kids accidentally break these promises, they're not going to want to tell the parent that they've broken the promise. It can sometimes lead to sneaky behaviors, but not because the child is trying to be sneaky and hide things in a malicious intent. It's more of a fear like, hey, I made a promise and I broke it, and promises are really important. So we don't want to promise them to behave. You maybe want to set up positive reinforcement so they can want to behave. But we don't want to make them promise, just in case accidents happen. Shouting or yelling can ruin the relationship between the caregiver and the child. Shaming or belittling can really have a negative effect on the child's self-esteem. Threatening to withhold love, that is also going to have a major impact on the relationship with the parent, and then also their self-esteem as well. And then exaggerating consequences. If you don't come home on time, you're going to be grounded for a year. Okay, that's a big exaggeration. So you want to make sure that you keep it kind of logical when that happens, because they know after a while that you're not going to actually hold up that end of the deal. Hey, I came home 10 minutes late. I'm now grounded for a year. Hey, the parent is probably going to give up on that rather quickly. So then the child will continue to push those limits past them what they should. So that is a quick wrap up of the family dynamics, including negative reinforcement, positive reinforcement, and setting limits. So if you guys have any questions, make sure to email me and I will try to explain it further. Have a great day.